Straight games, no filler. This is Status Quo, episode number 28. My name is Queasy Crayfish, as always joined by my esteemed colleague,
Mars Vindicator.
That's right, and we are here today with another fine episode. We're going to be talking about all manner of topics. We're going to be talking about Red Dead Redemption 2 a little bit more, running throughout the theme of the show, probably bringing that one up a few times. But we're going to talk about Final Fantasy 15 DLC, which has been canceled, apparently, and Final Fantasy in general as another topic. We're also going to talk about a return of a previous topic, things younger gamers may not know about, gaming in antiquity. And lastly, we're going to talk about Western versus Japanese games. And like I said, Red Dead Redemption 2 will probably be mentioned numerous times throughout the show, just incidentally, because it's on everybody's mind and it's the big game out right now. But anyway, are you ready, Mars Vindicator, for some flake news, some fantastic news from our fantastic gaming media?
Oh, always. I'm always ready for, these great topics.
These great topics. Well, the greatest topic of all, and this has just been recently discovered. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a horribly misogynist game. As revealed in video evidence in which a man killed a feminist NPC within the game and fed her to an alligator, and it was highly controversial. Vice was very upset. Polygon was very upset. What do you think about that, Mars Vindicator?
Well, they killed the feminist. I thought the video was funny, right? Because I think that stuff is funny in any of those games. You know what I'm saying?
Killing random people in ridiculous ways, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Now, do I understand why killing random people in video games as a whole is a bad thing? Oh, of course, yeah. Would I want my kids to do that in general? Probably not, right? I get that whole thing. So I'm not a high school kid anymore, willing to just blindly defend the violence of video games. But I do think it's trash when, you treat, people differently within those video games. So what, he killed the feminist? I used to kill that preacher all the time in Grand Theft Auto 4. You know what I'm saying? Stand outside, on the box talking about the Lord. Yeah, he was annoying. It's like that feminist was. Not because of the message they were trying to give, but because of the way they were giving the message. So it happens. It's a game. I think if we're gonna tackle that, we gotta tackle it all or tackle none of it. And that's where I stand.
Okay. Some strong words from Mars Vindicator on the misogyny of Red Dead Redemption 2. Next up, Red Dead Redemption 2 Online will launch later this month. How about that? Some positive news.
That's definitely dope. I don't know if I'm gonna play it because I don't even play GTA Online, and if I was gonna choose between the two, that one would fit me way more. But it's obviously a big ass game. This has maybe potential to start to take over the Fortnite. So we'll see.
Possibly, since everyone owns the game, why not?
Exactly.
Next up, Voldo in Soul Calibur 6. I don't know if you've heard this or not, but apparently there's a bug in the game where he has access to free supers, free soul charges. I believe it's if he's in his back turn stance. He can just activate supers without any meter. And so he is now the number one S tier character in the game because of that. Your thoughts?
Wow. Well, from the way this sounds, it's obviously like he's obviously very, broken, but if this is some sort of thing that takes skill to access, then, you know, so be it. But, you know, luckily for us, we don't live in the dark ages where, you know, if you have handcuffed Giles at all the arcade machines across the entire country, you know, you don't have to, you know, place an order for a new, you know, $5,000 machine just to get rid of it. You know what I'm saying? So it'll be patched, you know, things happen.
Right. I just think it's weird that, well, not weird, but you know, we all kind of gave Tekken 7 a lot of crap for, like, being in console development for so long, and, you know, it came out in the arcades like years and years before it reached consoles. But Soul Calibur 6 is turning up a lot of really ridiculous bugs right now. There's other ones, I guess, where if you have a character that can do a move on the ground, which includes me because I play Xianghua, that can turn into, I believe, like an instant soul charge on Wake Up or something. There's some like absurd, you know, thing that you can do with that. So I mean, there's been a number of big bugs and obviously unintended problems with Soul Calibur 6 so far. So maybe, you know, some of these fighting games would benefit from a little bit of an arcade, you know, trial, as it were. But next up, let's keep it moving here with the Flake News. Former EA executive and DICE CEO, actually, I believe, has opened a new studio called Embark. What do you think about that?
So,
well, if that so wasn't definitive enough, here's what their focus is going to be: mobile games.
Yeah, it happens all the time. So, yeah,
just like Yuji Naka.
Yeah, what is it? Prope,
yes,
or whatever. Yeah, you know,
this is Prope, the American version.
I mean, like, that's like telling me, you know, the best chef I know from my town is gonna open up, you know, a white bread bakery, you know, a packaged sliced white bread bakery.
Hey, you can't get white bread everywhere.
Right. You know,
so that's Flake News. And lastly, and this will lead into our first topic for the day, Final Fantasy 15 DLC, the character DLC has been canceled. All the, I think 3 out of the 4, they said, remaining ones have been canceled. And the game director, Hajime Tabata, has resigned from the company. So, your thoughts?
So, you know, no, you know, yeah. Like, what I will say about this DLC is that I was a fan of Aranea. I'm always like those kind of like strong women Dragoon characters. You know, shout out to Fang and shout out to Freya. So I liked Aranea, so I was interested to see what they would do with her. But I didn't like their DLC structure at all because, you know, it had like no effect on the actual story. You know, it didn't like give you more EXP or, you know, whatever. At least, you know, the last I heard, it was just kind of like these literal, you know, just side things. So, you know, I didn't even really care. So, I mean, I don't think anybody was playing Final Fantasy 15. So, you know, I mean.
Well, yeah.
Sorry to the 6 people that are hurt.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like it's an old game now. I mean, yeah. I mean, not technically, I guess, but just the way that gaming releases just seem like they're in like overdrive sometime. Where, you know, we've talked about saturation in the market and everything like that, but it just seems like, you know, every month there's some new big, you know, everybody's got to play a game coming out, and Final Fantasy 15 is quite old from that perspective. So. Have you played any of these DLCs? I have not.
No. I mean, you know, I played like a little bit of one of them, I think. I don't even remember, but yeah, I mean, no, because yeah, I mean, like, if I'm playing a JRPG, I wanted the DLC to be, you know, like, you know, a JRPG, but it's not. It's like an adventure game. So,
is it? What I mean, how do they do them? It's just like all narrative or something, and no like.
No, you play it, but it's just like some other kind of battle system. You know, it's just it's like
completely different from the base game.
I don't necessarily know if it's like completely different, but it just like you just don't get like the experience, or you don't get all this stuff. It's like I guess you like just fight, and then when it's done, it's just done. It's literally just like a side episode. So you don't like take the party into the DLC. It's not like an extension into like the game world. It's just like this separate thing. So yeah, it'd be like if there was like DLC for Final Fantasy 9, like there's just like this side mission you select from the menu where like you play as Zidane, and he's probably like locked at level 50 or something, and you go through and fight some monsters and see some cutscenes, and then it's over. And like you don't get any experience or weapons or anything that you have in the actual game.
Wow. What I mean,
from the way I understood it.
If Final Fantasy 15 it's still in my backlog. I got up to like the first, I think, like big town. I don't remember the name of it because it's been so long now. And it just wasn't a compelling.
The first big town.
It was like a city.
Yeah, there's only 2 of them.
There's only 2. See, I don't even know. I mean, it just wasn't like a compelling game to me.
Yeah, I mean, 15. Because like I was saying earlier, like, so part of what made me play 15 was just that I'm a longtime fan. It came out at a pretty good time. What I mean by that is like there wasn't much else out, and it was kind of one of those things where like if you just like really played it regularly and you got to the end kind of quickly, then you would kind of just stay there. So for me, I got to the end pretty quick, and then there were all these like secret dungeons and extra things. Like, there was this one really crazy dungeon where it was just all platforming, and it was ridiculously hard.
I've heard about this one.
And like, I mean, it was kind of cool. And so like, I bought the strategy guide for it, and like for a while, I felt like I was playing an old school Final Fantasy game again. Strategy guide, and I'm going to get all this stuff, but yeah, I mean, the game gets boring after a while, and yeah, there's really only like 2 cities.
Okay. Well, I mean, it just felt like for lack of a better word, just like masturbation. Like it was just like like we've been developing this for so long. We built this huge world. It looks fantastic. We have all the money that we could possibly ask for to build this game. We're just gonna. I don't even remember like a really coherent story or anything going on. I mean, it just seemed like basking in this idea of like hanging out with the bros and like you're gonna love these characters and bonding with your friends, and it just was a really bizarre venue for something to be called Final Fantasy 15. Like it felt nothing like what and I'm not even I'm not a big Final Fantasy fan by any means. Like I've only played a handful of them, but and only really beaten one of them. But what I imagined Final Fantasy being was not at all what Final Fantasy 15 was.
Right. I mean, yeah, I think. I mean, the characters kind of honestly the characters did grow on me. I mean, I kind of liked those like character interaction things that they had. I mean, it was a small party, but I kind of liked the closeness of the party. But there definitely was a lack of like a greater story, and there was a lack of like, just kind of like really good side characters and things like that. And even the stuff with the party, like it was cool, but it kind of got played out after a while since there were only 4 guys. There would have been some much cooler dynamics if there was like like a older man in the group, or like a little sister character, the sexy woman character, all the regular archetypes, and then you take those and then you kind of expand on them with that style that they had. I thought that would have been really cool, but no, like it definitely got old after a while. You go into all these caves, and then who was it? Prompto was taking pictures or whatever, and
yeah,
and it's it was cool like the first couple times, but then it does get like pretty played out. And then and there's kind of I think there's like a lack of like varied and detailed scenery. You know, you don't have the cool towns like you had in the old games. It was definitely missing a lot. It was missing a lot of stuff.
Okay. Well, I mean, the game's with this announcement, the DLC is canceled, which basically means the game is canceled, and the creative director is gone. He's resigned, so Final Fantasy 15 is no more for all intents and purposes. So I guess let's just move into our second topic.
Wait. What does that even mean?
What do you mean?
Like Final Fantasy 15 is no more?
Well, I mean, from the idea that, because there seemed to be this like plan. Well, okay, this is basically what I wanted to get into with this second topic was somewhere along the line, and I think it was around like Final Fantasy X. I'm not totally sure because, like I said, I'm not a huge Final Fantasy fan. But that was when they started to do this thing where every new numbered entry in the series, with the exception, I guess, of 12.
No, 12 had a sequel.
12 had a sequel? Okay,
yeah.
Well, I didn't even know that. But like they started to make each numbered entry into like a sub-franchise within the larger Final Fantasy franchise. And so the idea with 15 seems to have been, we're going to have all these character DLCs, we're going to have all these, downloadable things, and that's going to be, of course, I mean, they had that whole like animated, I forget what it was called, but like the animated like prequel movie thing that you could get. So I mean, every single numbered entry now, they want to make it like this big franchise and have all these, different content, sometimes across different medias, or mediums, excuse me, and like, it seems like that has, it's been canceled, at least with Final Fantasy 15. I guess it wasn't really working out the way they thought it was. But I mean, has it really been with any of the other ones? I don't know.
I don't think it was. I mean, it definitely wasn't ever a huge thing. There were, some other. I don't know. Where do I go with this? I will mention just for history's sake. There was this Final Fantasy anime that came out in '94, and it was set in the same world as 5. Okay. And that's always like kind of recognized as like, the first extension of a Final Fantasy game. But that, I think, it only really came out in Japan, I think, at least initially. And so I don't know how big it was. I don't even know how big, 5 was, or maybe it did come out here. But, that's a pretty minor thing. But like you said, once 10 came out, they did the whole 10-2 thing. I've actually never fully played through 10-2, but I really liked 10-2. I liked the idea of it. And the thing I liked about 10-2 was how, like, it was very, like, relevant to that point in time. Because it was, like, really influenced by, like, Japanese pop stars that were out at the time and that sort of whole thing. And, it kind of helped that, like, Kingdom Hearts had its songs by one of like the biggest Japanese pop stars. So that whole thing kind of like felt right. It was like anime was getting big here. J-pop was getting big here. We were like at a different point in time. But then, yeah, as it like went on, it started to get kind of bad. Especially, one of the doper things about 10-2 was that it was just a flat out kind of straight up sequel. Same characters. It's kind of like right after the game. I mean, give or take, same characters. And then, and it was also just on the PS2. But like the sequel to 12 was on the DS, right? And I always hate stuff like that. Revenant Wings.
And yes, 12 I didn't even know about that.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a thing. And 12 is, a iffy game anyway. And then, you have all this stuff with 13. Now 13, all the sequels were on the same system again, but like these massively different battle systems and such, and yeah, and then with 15, 15 is basically just like that too. It's just that, they're just different DLC episodes, and then we all know about the 7 stuff So
Yeah, the retroactive Final Fantasy VII, Dirge of Cerberus, Crisis Core, Advent Children, the movie. It's like, yeah, they that seemed to be and I remember when 13 came out, like that was the the Fabula Nova Crystallis, series or whatever, and they were going to make it into this big like a media empire, through with the Final Fantasy 13 banner, over all of it.
Right.
And I'm just looking up right now, like, what were like total sales here? If we look at like Lightning Returns, Final Fantasy 13's physical sales, 1.09 million worldwide. That's actually better than I was expecting. But if I look at just like the regular Final Fantasy 13, I'm assuming it's going to be significantly higher.
I hope so.
Final Fantasy 13 PS3 5.35 million. So yeah, I mean, you're looking at like, you've lost quite a lot of sales there. Because 13 had 2 sequels. I mean, you have 13-2, and then you have Lightning Returns. And by the time you get to Lightning Returns, I feel like the basis of that story has just been so twisted, and it's like about lightning becoming God and creating our Earth and stuff. Like, it's just a really bizarre story, and I feel like the Final Fantasy series does this often, because it seems like there's a lot of entries in that series that, to an outsider like myself, just seem like, unapproachable. Like I whether it's just that they all have different names, you have like Tactics, and you have all these other, Dissidia, of course, and all these other like strange Chronicles, and they're like Chronicles or something like that too. Like, there's just so many oddball entries, that like I just don't even know how you begin to approach like this series and engage with it. You just don't.
Well, because I mean, the crazy thing about Fabula Nova Crystallis is like it was originally 3 games, right? And then 2 of those games just became totally separate games. Because you remember at first it was Versus 13, which became
exactly.
15, and then it was Agido 13, which became Type 0 on the PSP.
Okay.
Right, and then they did 13-2, and then Lightning Returns. So those were almost kind of like made, to an extent, like almost like on the fly, Like, I think they were trying to like gauge who was popular out of those games, or what people liked out of those games, and then they like made those games after the fact, because that it wasn't even the original plan.
That's funny, because the conclusion they reached was, like, who was popular out of 13? And nobody, apparently.
I mean, basically.
Because 13-2 is, focused on a minor character, Sarah, and
this fake one.
What's his name?
Rain or something?
It's with an N. Is it Noel? Noel Kreis? Yeah, he's not even in the first game. I mean, he's just a brand new character. Yeah, I mean, Hope and Vanille and Snow and all, Fang and all of them, they're just they were just relegated to like supporting roles. So that's, and Saj, I can't forget him, however you pronounce his name, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, what's your opinion overall? I guess you're a Final Fantasy fan.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would say, which is kind of funny, is like I always call myself a Final Fantasy fan, but I honestly really only enjoyed the series for like 3 or 4 years.
Really?
I mean, yeah, because I mean, like, what else was there to enjoy? Like, I mean, I guess I got 7, I think, in 1998.
Which is almost before 8 came out anyway.
Yeah. No, yeah, I got like in 98. Because it was like 98, or it might have even been early 99. It was, because it was already a greatest hits, but I don't think 8 was out. But I didn't get 8. And then I got 9. And then I got 10. And so 10 came out in 01. So you're only looking at like 3 years there. And then, in that little time period as well, I like went back and played pretty much all the older ones on emulators, and then finally got, I got back into 7 and then got back into 8. And so, yeah, I mean, there wasn't another big entry in the series that I could play because I couldn't play 11 until 2006, right, when 12 came out. And that was kind of an iffy game, and I never finished that. And then 13 came out, and that was And I mean, I enjoyed 14 quite a bit. 'Cause I did, I was finally able to play that one online, but that's neither here nor there. And then 15. So yeah, like a majority of the time that I said I've liked Final Fantasy, I haven't even really been that big into the series, or at least like playing new games in it with it, and because I mean it's just the way the series is released and the way the series is just so different from what it used to be, and not just in the sense that like the games themselves are different, but like how it's released, how it's marketed, how people perceive it. I feel like all that stuff is just so different. I think one of the things about those games is that 7 came out and it was 7. It was like this perfect story. 8 was this perfect story. 9, perfect story. Even 10. I mean, obviously all the ones before it. And so a lot of the fun was just into like, digging deeper into those games, and then, you like there's, like I would have loved if Beatrix and Senna and Blank and all those guys became playable in 9, right? But they never did. So part of the thing part of like that game is just like like the if that ever happened, like how would I enjoy that? That's all like a part of me, like in Final Fantasy 9, for example. But with these other games, they just extend them so much that like they leave nothing to the imagination, and everything is played out, and there's DLC and new games, and it's just too much stuff. So yeah, like you never got the sense that 15 was like this perfect RPG because you knew they were gonna be trying to add to it and make more stuff,
So you'd say, I mean, the way that they kind of went with this making sub franchises within the larger franchises basically had a negative effect on Final Fantasy in general.
I would say so. Because and I think too what you're looking at now is like, yeah, I mean now you have like 15 worlds, right? Like, and that's not including other stuff like the Tactics world or the Crystal Chronicles world. You know what I'm saying? And so yeah, it's kind of like too much, So yeah, it's hard to even try to look at this whole thing because yeah, like I mean, that's the thing. Like, I don't even really consider myself a Final Fantasy fan as much as I'm like a Final Fantasy 4, 6, and 9 fan. You know what I'm saying? Like as far as I'm concerned, I can just write the other ones out. You know what I'm saying? Because like yeah, like what's the sense in diving so deep into those?
Well, and this kind of leads into our next topic here. Things younger gamers don't know. I mean, when you talk about Final Fantasy, and we were kind of mentioning this before we started recording, Final Fantasy, when we say it, it's like this big name. It's Final Fantasy. It's this legendary series that's been going for years and years and years. But, if you're under the age of, 25, 20 or something like that, if someone says Final Fantasy to you, I mean, what are they going to think?
Right.
Like what is there going to be their impression of the Final Fantasy franchise? Is it going to be like these weird, unrelated, Japanese games that have lots of DLC? I really don't know what they're going to be thinking about when they see that. And I feel like there's a lot of other franchises also that have really, when we talk about them, it's a big deal, and when younger people talk about them, it's just like another thing. And of course, I'm going to mention Sonic the Hedgehog because that's, it's, perennially one of my favorite franchises to just get mad about. But, to us, Sonic the Hedgehog was this big thing. He was everywhere. He had cartoons, he had clothes and shoes and pasta and, floats in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, as we've talked about before. And now, when you hear the name Sonic the Hedgehog, when you see a new Sonic game, it's like a joke, you know. It's like this, or at best, it's, you know, he's some character that has games that come out sometimes, and he's for kids, you know. Like, there's just nothing really that exciting or that groundbreaking to it. So, I mean, Mars Vindicated, what other kind of franchises would you say people have skewed interpretations of based on their age at this point?
Well, I do just want to point out that one big point like this in my life that this always reminds me of is I remember when that R&B singer Truth Hurts came out with this song with Rakim in like '02. I just remember all these old people being like, "Oh shit, like Rakim is out back," and I was like, "Who's Rakim?" You know, like. You know, and I had kind of like heard of him a little bit, but, you know, it just, obviously that didn't hit me the way it hit, you know, all the, you know, 30 plus hip hop fans at the time, you know, so definitely a lot of games like that. And I think it's kind of something that we even have to kind of look at in this podcast. And, you know, it probably even affects how we talk about games, right? Because, I mean, honestly, you can probably talk about like, a lot of franchises, period, that are just like that in general, that even may still be somewhat popular. Like, just take all the fighting games, right? Like Tekken, Soul Calibur, Street Fighter. I'm sure when we talk about those, we see them as even a little differently than the young people. I mean, I brought up that thing about Guile, right? You know, they just had no idea who that character even was. You know, these young people I saw.
Exactly.
You know, and those series are just still even around. I mean, I would even imagine it's like that with Devil May Cry. You know, the new one coming out. I'm sure there's like a bit of a gap there. But then there's some like very obvious ones, like like I was mentioning Double Dragon earlier. Like, you know, that was at one point in time that was like the shit. You know, it was like the main beat 'em up to a certain extent. Like Contra. You know what I'm saying? Like. That may have been like, you know, the Dark Souls back in the 8-bit days. You know, this ridiculously hard game. Yeah, and Mega Man. Yeah, because you know, and it's funny because a lot of these games, you know, these franchises, like they get, you know, they treat them just like they treat like old rappers, right? Like, you know, like, oh, you know, Grandmaster Flash has a little, you know, 5-song EP. You know, you can buy it if you know, every time you buy a subscription to Bengay, you know, you just kind of like, you know, you just like this little small thing now. And yeah, that's like what they do to Mega Man, you know, like at one point he's like this system seller character, but now he just gets like this, you know, $30, you know, straight to video. And by straight to video, I mean download only game, you know, even the concept of straight to video. You know, well, I guess they have that straight to streaming, you know,
straight to Netflix. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You know, yeah. Like, Mega Man is one. Sure, I mean, there's like a number of them because I'm trying to think of ones that are like, you know, that aren't just old but like are still relevant, you know.
Well, I mean,
to a certain extent,
we could even talk. I mean, I know you said we would be mentioning this throughout the show, but we could even almost talk about Red Dead Redemption at this point. I mean, like you know, the first, well, not the first game, but I mean, even go back to Red Dead Revolver. I mean, that's like age old at this point. But I mean, even Red Dead Redemption 1 was like. What was it, 8 years ago now? So I mean, there's a lot of people that are 20 now that were like, you know, 12 when that game came out and are probably, you know, possibly not even familiar with it.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, what, like, you talk about the first Red Dead Redemption?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I mean, yeah, Revolver was 04.
Yeah, so I mean,
you know, so yeah, right, I mean, there. that was on the PS2. That I don't know if I mentioned, like, I remember a time when I was at GameStop, like probably like within the last 2 years, and there were like these bagged PS2 controllers sitting on the shelf, and they were like dirt cheap, and I was like, why do you guys have these? And I'm buying both of them, and the guy was like, we hired this new girl, and she thought they were wired PS3 controllers, right? And so that's why she took them in a trade. So like, yeah, like she has no idea about PS2 even, you know, and that was like the biggest thing in the world. Like literally, she took in
insane.
Controllers. Yeah, like. So I had these 2 DualShock 2s, you know.
That's insane.
So, yeah, like, yeah, I mean, Red Dead Revolver. Shit, I mean, even Grand Theft Auto, you know? Like look at that one. Like, at one point in time, I used to just think that was some little trash-ass game. Like, nobody's playing GTA. Like, yeah, like GTA 2 on the Dreamcast. Like,
right,
who
top
gave
down,
a
exactly.
shit? you know. But now it's like the biggest thing ever. Honestly, Call of Duty was like that too. Really, you know, I feel like at one point in time, like Call of Duty was just kind of this like, you know, weird military shooter, like the first like one or two, and then and it was just like it was not even mentioned around like Halo.
No.
You know, like it was not even close to being in the same group.
Yeah, even like Medal of Honor, I feel like was more well respected.
Yeah, I definitely. And then next thing you know, here it is. You know, because it's interesting too how some games can kind of like go in and out of this. Because I feel like Ninja Gaiden and Metal Gear are two franchises that were like, you know, they existed and they were kind of big, and then they went away, and then they came back very big, and now they're dead again. You know, yeah. So you have like, you know, like if there was like a new Ninja Gaiden, there would be like 3 totally separate generations of Ninja Gaiden fans. You know, it's
I
much
hope there is.
Right? Yeah. That would be dope. You know, it's much different than something like Pokemon, where like it's just been continuous. You know, or like Mario. Yeah. You know.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I mean, like, that's kind of the thing with Call of Duty now is, like, through their system, they kind of have this, like, lockdown on, like, you know, they're going to be relevant for the foreseeable future. I mean, they've already got 2 games in development now. They've got one, you know, coming out in a year, and they got another one that's, you know, just started development coming out in 2 years. And I'm sure Treyarch is probably not too long before they're going to be starting on their next one, which will be coming out in 3 years. And so it's like they're constantly maintaining this relevance. Whereas I feel like, you know, games like Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead and Elder Scrolls and stuff like that, like they've like stretched these games for so long that you wonder, I mean, like, you know, when Skyrim came out, like it's, you know, it's been, I don't know how many years at this point, but I mean
7, I think
7 years, you know. I mean, so people that are 20 now or 13 when that game came out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just ridiculous. And, you know, I guess, like, with that age gap, you could see where someone might, like, have grown up playing the game, you know, and possibly on various different platforms. But, I mean, someone who was maybe, like, say, 15 or something like that, like, to them, it's just, like, this old thing, you know, and they don't even know anything about Oblivion. They have no reason to, because it's just so old, and they've stretched every game in the series for so long. Some of these franchises, you wonder how they're going to even remain with that same like AAA star power. I mean, yeah, like Ninja Gaiden, like you go from, you know, like I guess popular NES games. I don't really know like the level of popularity that they had, but to, you know, becoming like releasing possibly, arguably one of the greatest action games of all time, if not the greatest single action game of all time. Ninja Gaiden on the Xbox, to, you know, Ninja Gaiden 2 being this kind of like so-so sequel to Ninja Gaiden 3 being like critically panned, and now like the franchise is dead again, and you just have, you know, Hayabusa and Dead or Alive games. It's just like such a bizarre transformation, and you could see how younger people may have just completely missed that entire storyline, you know, and it's just unknown to them.
Well, you know, one thing I feel like too that I think we kind of both do, that I don't really think about is like despite the way I am, I seem to always like judge these kids today as if their gaming knowledge starts when they're like 10. But like for me, when I was 10, I was already like well seasoned, and I had already like liked franchises and like moved on to other franchises, like even just by the time I was 10. So it's funny when when you were talking about like Skyrim, like what's funny is like probably to the average like gamer kid, and I think we do that too because we know there's so many more like pop gamer kids now, pop gamers in general. But like if I was 15 now, I would have definitely known about Skyrim. Right? Because that's like, it was 7 years prior, so I would have been 8, right? Like when I was 8, like when I was 8, right? So we're talking about what, 1997? Oh yeah, like I was deep. Like I was deep in the game. Like I had already like established a extremely strong liking for Sega, and that was like on the downturn, right? Because the Saturn was dying. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of weird to even like think about, because like I sometimes I wonder that even more is like, do the 15-year-old kids, like, instead of assuming that they don't know Skyrim, like, like which ones of them do,
Yeah.
Because it's like, because like in all honesty, like, I mean, like when like 8, like, because we're talking about like 64.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm having flashbacks to our Sega conversations. Shameless plug. You can check those out on my YouTube channel, Queasy Crayfish. But yeah, we talked about at great length in such detail, like classics and stuff and great franchises that we remembered from, not just PS1, Saturn, 64, but from even before then. And,
right. Yeah. Exactly.
So and how we, our opinions had changed, and we went from, you went from Sega to Sony. I went from Sega to Nintendo, and so that is a fair point. I mean, there are kids coming up now, and kids who have come up, that were, younger than us, that are, definitely true gamers. I'm sure that grew up with these franchises and have seen them grow, and probably, some of the best players in Skyrim that could tell us all kinds of things that we don't even know about in that game.
Right, yeah, because it's crazy to even think about. Like, we talk about how big of Sega fans we are, but that was all pretty much done by the time we were like 11. You know what I'm saying? Like, like that, because that was like when we realized Sonic Adventure 2 sucked.
Yeah, basically.
Like, so. Yeah, like that's really honestly like kind of wild to even think about. So like honestly, by the time I was 15, I had felt like I had like, I felt like an old gamer. Like, oh, like I was already doing like back in my day stuff at that point in time. Talking about how like crazy the PS2 was, and but I do think that we went through a much different process though, because I mean, the weird thing is, like, I don't think there were any games that had been consistently coming out, between 8 and like 15, right? Or even, but whereas like Skyrim has like just consistently existed for this whole time, So sometimes I wonder how that even like plays out for them. You know what I'm saying? Because like, right. Despite the fact that they,
it's just like this constant thing that's always in the background. Skyrim.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really weird to think about, because we didn't have like service games, and I mean, just the sheer fact that like within 10 years, right, from like 94 to 04, we went from like Sonic 3 to like Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, right, or like maybe like Vice City, right. So, like, ridiculous jump. And I think a much more ridiculous jump than, say, Skyrim to Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think that, I mean, there's no question. I mean, going from, Mortal Kombat being the most shocking thing out to beating up hookers in Grand Theft Auto in
exactly.
a relatively short time frame compared to, killing a feminist in Red Dead Redemption, which doesn't even seem like, to me, like, it didn't even seem that shocking. It was like, like this.
Yeah, it didn't at all.
Exactly. It's like, okay, so you killed somebody in a game, like,
right,
yeah. We've been doing that for a long time. Like, this is, we were turning people in Mortal Kombat, and we were turning people into skeletons and ripping their heads off and spines hanging out. Like, this is not new, so.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's actually, I would actually be like interested in getting like a 16-year-old like gamer. You know what I'm saying? And like just really like seeing what they know. You know what I'm saying? Because like, I mean, would they? Because think of how even us, like, we know that we didn't really like really have it or really play it, but like we know a lot about the NES just because. So like, would that 16-year-old gamer know a lot about the PS2? You know what I'm saying? It's kind of Cause yeah, what are you talking about? Like, like 2002. You know what I'm saying? When they were born. So like during that era. So,
It's fascinating.
I will tell you one damn thing though. I would not have taken in a NES controller because I thought it was a GameCube controller. It's a simple GameCube controller. Cool. I wasn't that dumb. But that just speaks to the whole thing that like I'm sure that girl they had was like a pop gamer. I'm sure she wasn't like an OG.
Well, maybe. I mean, in fairness to her, the DualShocks are a lot closer in design than NES and GameCube, but
I mean that's true, but we would have known.
Okay, well, she can get at us and explain what her line of thinking was in that case, I guess. But well, the last topic for today, and I have a feeling this one might take up some time here. Western versus Japanese games. Now, I really want to lay this out because, of course, this is in the context of Red Dead Redemption 2 that this all kind of occurred to me. And I'm not even sure if I'm completely sold on this theory. But my line of thinking was, so you sit down, you play Red Dead Redemption 2, it's the hottest game out, people saying it's the best game ever, and, so on and so forth. You sit down and play it. Mars Vinegar, how far did you get in this game so far?
Like, not... I don't even know.
Well, how many hours, like, roughly, into the game? You made it to the open world part.
Yeah, so that wouldn't even... I don't even think I played it for a combined hour. Maybe...
You're in chapter 2?
I guess so. I don't even know. I made it to the open world, and then yesterday I got on the train and I just sat there for 20 minutes and then I got off, and now I'm in a big city and I don't know where I am.
Okay, you're farther than me because I don't even know. I don't even know about any trains or anything like that. So, okay. Well, here was my point. So, you've played at least a few hours of the game. We'll say. Okay, at least an hour.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about Arthur Morgan.
Who? Is that the main character?
That's the main character you play as. Tell me about him. What's he like?
Well, he's white.
Without describing his looks.
He seems kind of stoic. He seems, he seems like he wouldn't rape a woman, or he wouldn't or he wouldn't just shoot people and kill them for fun. But okay. I feel like he would rob you. He just seems like he'll take.
So nothing too specific.
Yeah,
you don't know about his attitudes or his demeanor or anything. He's just or his history or how he relates to the other characters.
What are those guys' names? The McGillicuddies. What are the names?
The O'Driscolls.
Yeah, O'Driscolls. Same thing.
He hates them, but why?
Because they stepped on his boots. They raped his sister. One of those, some Old West reason. They chased him out of Blackwater. I don't know. They shot my brother.
Okay. Well, so the whole point I was getting at is, okay, so let's compare this to, say, a game like Metal Gear Solid or something. And people might say that's not a fair comparison, but I would say it is because people are saying Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of the greatest games of all time and da-da-da-da. So let's look at one of the greatest games of all time without question, Metal Gear Solid. What do you know about Solid Snake within the first hour of the game? What do you know about his character? Who is the antagonist in Metal Gear Solid? Who all these things within the first hour of the game.
Yeah, you do. Man, I'll just be truthful here. I kind of wish you picked a better example because maybe I haven't had this talk with you, but I actually have this talk with Mark Elliott a lot about how like I kind of think Solid Snake is like kind of whack.
You think Solid Snake is whack?
He's kind of like I kind of feel he was like boring, and I kind of feel that way based on 1. Like I feel like if you compare Metal Gear Solid 1 to Metal Gear Solid 3, I feel like Naked Snake is like way more interesting. But then in 2, he gets like way better. But you definitely know who the antagonist is in the first like 2 minutes, like for sure. I mean, but I guess okay. I guess you know a lot about.
Regardless of what you may think Solid Snake is whack, I mean, you know about him. Like like he hates war, and yet he's continually drawn into war. Like he's given up this life, he's being brought back into it for this specific reason, and like he has his whole lineage with the genetic thing. Like there's all these like things to his character, and you get kind of like the roughness of him, and yet he has like a soft spot for women, and like
you don't get that in the first hour.
You get it within the opening of the game, I think. I mean, depending on how fast you play. I mean, you get up to, like, meeting Meryl, fairly quickly, I feel like.
Well, I mean... See, okay, I can't lie. Man, okay, because... Okay, yeah, I do just kind of think... is not the best example. And here's what I'll say about that. I think you have to take these two games into the context of like what they were at the time when they came out, right? So like yeah, like you definitely don't meet Meryl in the first hour of Metal Gear Solid when you play it for the first time in 1998. Like you meet her like 20 hours into the game. Like,
I don't know about 20, but yeah, I would
like,
agree.
You know what I'm saying? Because yeah, I mean, and not even just because I was like a child, but because you have to really, I feel like you have to really conceptualize within like all of that, right? Like yeah, like when you actually, like, to tell you the truth, I almost feel like Metal Gear Solid kind of like negates the example, because I feel like in comparison to the time, Metal Gear Solid was kind of similar to Red Dead Redemption, because like a lot of what intrigued me about that game was like a lot of the stuff that I could do. And I mean, of course, since it was new, but like I could like take out and smoke a cigarette, right? So sometimes I would just like smoke the cigarette, and that was like interesting. Or I would like make footprints and like knock on the wall and make them see the footprints, right? Like, and so that's kind of what I mean. Like, honestly, like in that first hour of playing Metal Gear Solid, like at the time when it came out, like I honestly didn't know anything about Solid Snake. Now, again, I think it's another.
You're playing it as a child. I mean, if you're playing it as an adult at the time, I feel like I'm looking at this kind of as just like what the game offers. Like I feel like the stories and the characters are so much more clearly and vividly drawn in Metal Gear Solid within the first few hours of the game compared to Red Dead Redemption, where you're thrown in with all of these characters who seem, either insignificant or irrelevant or uninteresting, or just like the way they're introduced. I mean, it's like, oh, here's Dutch, he's some guy, like he's the leader of the gang, what's interesting about him? Well, he's the guy, he's the leader of the, I mean, there's just nothing. It's not like he's introduced in this interesting character moment. It's not like Gray Fox coming out and, like slicing people up. It's like there's the way you're introduced to characters in Metal Gear Solid is so much more impactful and interesting and memorable than the first time you're introduced to Arthur Morgan. I mean, like, who is he? He's just like, it's just all of a sudden you're in control of him, and you can barely even tell when he's the one speaking, and you don't even know who the antagonist is. You're just like doing stuff.
Like, seriously, I'm not even playing devil's advocate here, and I'm not just arguing for the sake of arguing. Cause, and I'm basing a lot of this off the fact that like I recently played Metal Gear Solid again. Cause again too, like Gray Fox comes quite deep into the game. Like when you're at I know that we were children, but you even have to just think about the fact that like people in general weren't even used to playing a game like that at that time, right? Like the game that probably played before Metal Gear Solid was like, yeah, like it was pretty like reasonable for like some man to have like been playing Knights on his Sega Saturn and then get Metal Gear Solid, right? So,
well, that may be, but I mean, regardless of when you meet him, his introduction is so much more interesting than the introduction of someone like Dutch or you know, Colm O'Driscoll in Red Dead Redemption 2.
But that's what I mean. Like I don't. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Like if you're just comparing introductions in general, I guess.
Well, forget Red Dead Redemption 2. I mean, just talk about like Western games in general. I mean, like, you know, who's the antagonist in some of these games? I mean, you play some of these games and it's like, yeah, like who's the antagonist in like Assassin's Creed or you know, in some of these games? Like I played the entirety of Assassin's Creed 2, and I can't tell you who the antagonist of that game was. You know, even like Halo or something like that, like games that I played the hell out of. Like, who's the antagonist in Halo 1? It's just like a general group of aliens, you know, like there's no there's like just a lack of character, I think, in a lot of Western games. It's just like these groups and smaller archetypes and things like that, and I just don't think that when you look at something like Zelda, where it's like you have Link, you have Ganon, you look at Mario, you have Link, or you have Mario and you have Bowser, and you look at even Sonic, you have Robotnik, you know, like there's just like these forever, you know, memorable things and these characters that you just know go together and are always facing off against each other. Whereas you look at something like Red Dead Redemption 2 and it's just like this amorphous thing, you know, like you play as this character who's, I don't even know who he is, you know, like you you just put in his shoes, he doesn't seem to have anything really distinctive about him, at least in the first few hours of gameplay. And then, you know, who's the bad guy? I have no fucking idea, you know, like there's no, I mean, you could say it's O'Driscoll or whatever, but I mean, there's other gangs within the game, so it could very well as easily be just one of them. It could be one of my own guys. I don't know. There's no pushback from anyone really so far in the game. So I just feel like none of these. A game like that just doesn't even attempt to adhere to that kind of story structure whatsoever. And I think for someone like me, that's a big problem, especially coming from a big AAA release, you know, major $1 billion release game.
Right. No, I mean, I think that example in general, I think definitely works. I think that is true. I think, I mean, Japanese games, I feel like a lot of Japanese media in general does like a big thing with setting, you know, like a enemy and a, you know, like a main character, a protagonist, and then an antagonist, and having to be this kind of consistent thing. You know. Yeah, I mean, I do think that is true. I think that's definitely a part of the reason why I like a lot of Japanese games more. Yeah, I guess it just kind of threw me off thinking about it in terms of like Metal Gear Solid, right? But yeah, like when it's like all general, I feel like I definitely do agree. I guess, but like, I don't know. I guess for me, that's just kind of like the extent of it. Like, you know, I mean, I don't think all Western games suck or anything. But they are just kind of like that. Like you said, they're just kind of like this amorphous thing. And I guess that was kind of why, that may be like maybe a part of the reason why I kind of made that point with With like, if the game is extremely vast and extremely open, then I kind of have to have like a created character, because then I can kind of maybe set those things, or I can set that stuff to it like being how I want it to be, right? Because I mean, yeah, like in Elder Scrolls, like of course there's always like this main story, but like when you get into like those like little side stories, like you can yourself decide that like who's ever the antagonist of like a particular storyline, like maybe for you that's like the biggest thing in the game, right? And everything you do is like based around that. Like if you want it to be like that, it can be. And so yeah, that's kind of why it gets weird, I think, when you're playing as in this like huge open, place where the storyline is also just kind of open, but you have this like specific character, right? And so yeah, I would say I think that's a thing that I don't like about a lot of Western games. Because yeah, like when you play a Japanese game and you have a specific character, that specific character always has this like specific enemy, And yeah, I think Japanese game developers do that stuff very well. But then too, there's a lot of things about Japanese and Western games that I think are huge differences that also don't, because like it I think it extends even outside of like this particular genre or this particular set of rules that makes me like Japanese games more than I like Western games. Because like for example, like if you take like Jet Grind Radio, right? Like I guess there is like a antagonist, but I don't really like remember that, and that's not really like why I like those games. But those, like, just the way those games looked, like the music choices, the way that they paid so much attention to like, like that kind of export style at the time, and like put that into the game with like the weird mixture of graffiti, how it's like this, fictional but based on reality Tokyo. Like all of that is what made me like that game, and I don't think there's a really good Western equivalent to that. So I definitely do agree with like the first point, but I guess for me, I think there's other reasons why I prefer Japanese games that are like stronger than like, I guess maybe the initial reasons that you brought up.
Well, yeah, I mean, hashtag not all. I mean, obviously, yeah, like
right.
There's Japanese games that have, crappy stories or irrelevant stories, or vice versa. I mean, there's Western games that have very good stories and clear antagonists and protagonists and clear story structure and everything like that. But I just feel like, I mean, when you have the biggest game out has just this like narrative that is completely however you want to. I mean, and maybe it's just me. I mean, because to me it's absurd, the idea that like they're going to put you in this character's shoes, but you can just like screw around. Like you can just not engage with the story at all for countless hours, to no consequence, and not even like attempting to finish the game or do the main missions or anything like that. Like, and the idea that there's like nothing that's going to drive you along or encourage you to do that. And it doesn't even have to be like the game telling you like you must go do this now. It's just the like having a story that says like this is important, this is relevant, this is something I'm interested in, I want to see what happens next. Like the game just flat out does not have that, nor does it even attempt to have that, as far as I'm concerned. And so like when you take something that's like the biggest Western game out right now and it has that kind of story structure, I think like that's kind of concerning to me. If I'm going to be a fan of Western games, like it's just I don't know, I can't get behind that. I can't support that.
No, that's kind of exactly why I don't think that game should have a story. That's exactly why I think this game should just be a Western Elder Scrolls. Because
sandbox.
Yeah, exactly. Because in those games you don't feel the tension, from not completing the story. Exactly. Yeah, it's like whatever you want to do is what you're gonna get into. And yeah, so that's kind of why, yeah, I'm not like a big fan of that sort of game. And I mean, I'll be totally honest. I can probably, I can like name like all of my favorite Western games in like one hand. You know,
do it.
I mean, if I was to really talk about like franchises that like I really like want games from, right? Like right now, it will probably only be Mass Effect, The Last of Us, and I mean like of course like GTA, but you know, again, like GTA is just like, I just treat it like a sandbox. It's not, you know, I'm not like really driven to play it, but I will play it. But I guess GTA. And then there was like, oh yeah, and then obviously the Elder Scrolls, right? So yeah, I mean, you know, The Last of Us is out. Last of Us is extremely story driven. It's only story driven, right? So that's what I think makes that game good, right? Because that is one of those ones where you do get like a clear protagonist. You definitely get a clear protagonist, and you get like a real antagonist. It's like the disease, you know, but that's there. And then like with Mass Effect, I guess what I liked about that game is like there is this looming battle that you have, that you know you have to do, but like it's kind of far off, so it doesn't make you feel bad for not doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, you know. And then in those games, some of the stuff that you're supposed to do isn't even like driven directly towards the end. So in that game, you kind of get like this cool middle ground, but it still feels contained, and it doesn't feel like too ridiculously open. And you can't just do whatever you want. And then in the Elder Scrolls, it's like the complete opposite. It's not contained at all, and you can just do whatever you want, right? Just make your own story. So yeah, I've like Red Dead falls in that weird middle ground where like the new Assassin's Creed games fall, kind of where like Far Cry falls, you know, where I don't know, it's just not that fun. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, I like the new Assassin's Creed, like I liked it, but it just, you know, it just didn't get me, you know. But I guess though, I wasn't necessarily saying that like, oh, some Japanese games don't have good stories. It wasn't that I was saying that. What I was saying was like, I think for me, like if the topic is like Japanese versus Western, to me, that's like, that part isn't even like an issue. It's kind of what I was saying.
Okay. Well, to me, I mean, I think that's an issue, you know, and I think that, I mean, when you gave your, what makes a great game, like root to reason was basically like meta, you know, and for me it was, and kind of surprisingly it was story, because I don't think it, like, I'm not interested in like playing The Last of Us. I'm not interested in playing Uncharted and stuff like that. And I think that's more because of like gameplay reasons. Like I'm more for like this really nice blend of gameplay, you know, that's driven by story, and to me that's like, you know, God of War or something like that, or even like Yakuza or something, or Shenmue for sure. But like, yeah, I mean, like I feel like at its core, I mean, if I'm thrust into some gigantic open world that has no real rules, or, you know, no direction or anything, without any kind of story to you know, compel me to do anything, I'm just gonna say, you know, I'd rather read or something. You know what I mean?
That I guess that's kind of why I don't get why you don't like The Last of Us, because like that is totally story driven.
But from what I understand, the gameplay is, you know, not that fantastic, and also I'm just not like, zombie games and stuff just don't really, like, I don't know, they don't do it for me, or just zombie anything really.
That's it. Well, they're not zombies, you know. But, you know, I don't know. I know you have your certain, you know, things you don't like, but because I don't like zombie games either. That's kind of the thing. Like I don't even like Resident Evil really, and I definitely don't like any of those other ones. I have pretty much no interest in playing that new one that's coming out. But I'm telling you, The Last of Us is something else, But hey, I think you're missing out. But I guess and I guess the reason why I say that is because like there's just so many Japanese games that I like that I just don't care at all about the story, right? Like Pokemon, for example, right? Like, I mean, like those games always have stories in them, and I always play through them, but I don't care about those at all. You know what I'm saying? And then if you take like fighting games, right? Like, I like the stories in those games, but that isn't like the driving force. And then it's like if you take something like Final Fantasy, I definitely do like the story, right? But there's something that puts Final Fantasy, Pokemon, and Tekken all in the same category. And it's not just the fact that they're Japanese, but I think it just has to do with this certain flair that Japanese developers and Japanese creators put on their games. And I think they have like a much stronger sense of like the importance of using stuff like music in the games and having like a soundtrack that like either really like matches what the game is, or a soundtrack that like really tries to like, like it's like a very notable soundtrack, right? Like because yeah, like if you take like the soundtrack to Jet Grind Radio, like it's like a lot of different genres of music, but it all seems to like match in this like cohesive thing, and it like really like it kind of matches the game. Yeah, it drives the action. And I think that's something that like that all of those games do. I honestly I think one of the bigger things that helped to kill a lot of like recent JRPGs for me is like is a lot of times like if you don't have like battle music, right? Like if the battles just kind of happen. Like that was what I didn't like about 12, right? It was like it just kind of didn't really have battle music. So like that, and then you realize how like important of a part that is. Like all these games are like, like in the Pokemon games, and you go in like the different towns and kind of have like their different songs. The Pokemon Center has a different song. It all all that stuff matters. And there's like this certain visual flair. And so to me, I think if I was really to compare Japanese and Western games, I think there's just this different sort of like soul that Japanese games have. Because I guess I only make that point because I feel like that soul is apparent in all games, regardless of whether or not they even have a story, right? Whereas I feel like Western games just don't have it, also regardless of whether or not they have a story. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't know the story of like Sonic when I was playing that, right? But like it definitely had a lot of soul. You know what I'm saying? So I guess I kind of guess that was like the point that I was making. Like I do like agree with where you were going with the story thing. But then it's like, yeah, but then you throw some in there like Pokemon, and then just like, So, I guess, yeah, for me, that's where I see like the Japanese versus Western divide.
Yeah, I mean, Japanese are like stronger aesthetically, I think, for sure. I mean, you have a lot more. I feel like they take a lot more chances with like art design and obviously music, soundtrack, everything like you said. I mean, yeah, a lot of Western games, it's just like, let's recreate New York. Let's recreate
right.
the Old West. Let's recreate Los Angeles, and it's an open world. And I don't know, like, it just feels like very, boardroom-esque, like this is what we have to do to sell X amount of copies. And it's just, and of course there's some great Western games. I don't mean to, there's lots of good Western games. Obviously, I mean, like Mortal Kombat, I think is a great franchise. I think obviously like Witcher 3 was a fantastic game, but I think even that was like, it was, for me, that was a good game for its like subsystems and combat system and crafting and alchemy and stuff like that, and the way the magic system worked. It wasn't, certainly very little to do with the story and the characters, I think, because it just wasn't that interesting. It was just like, oh, Geralt's he's a tough guy, and
Right.
Like it's just, he's a womanizer. Like I don't know. It's just there seems like a lot of Western games they throw you in with these like pretensions of like, look at our great characters. I mean, I can't tell you the number of articles I've read about like Red Dead Redemption 2's fantastic characters and Arthur Morgan's such a fantastic deep character, and I'm like, so why is it that like a couple hours into the game I know almost nothing about him?
Right.
And that's just kind of where I'm coming from. I think that like there's some kind of like weird cult going on with these games that I'm just not a part of, and I don't understand, because I honestly can't look at a game like that where you're just thrown in and you have no direction, and it's just an open world that's been meticulously crafted to be realistic looking, and yet you feel like why am I so compelled to leave to just turn the game off and do something else instead?
Right.
I don't know.
Well, I guess another point too that I wanted to bring up, which was something like you mentioned earlier that I agree with, and I just want to expand on. When you were saying like a lot of Western games are just like, let's recreate New York, right? So I think like Spider-Man is a great example, right? Spider-Man, and even to an extent L.A. Noire. Now I like both of these games, right? A lot, but what Yakuza does differently than them, because if you say like they just recreate New York, well, like Yakuza just recreates Tokyo, right? But like where I think there's a difference in these two things is like the worlds that they have, like they're definitely cool, and there's definitely some detail in them, right? They have buildings, and like, oh, it has this, but like Yakuza is just so meticulous in the way that it like recreates like Tokyo, like just like the way that it has like all of the like it has like the convenience stores, and it has like the items that you can buy in the convenience stores, right? Like that you can actually buy in real life. It has like certain like sit down restaurants that people go to that you can also go to. Right, it's like extremely meticulous. So like instead of focusing on like this vast thing, they focus on recreating like this small little part of Tokyo in extreme detail. Whereas like when you take Spider-Man, like those NPCs, like they don't necessarily feel like New York people. They're just kind of like Western NPCs. And it's like there's cars and stuff there, but like it's just kind of there. It's not like it's like you can't like just walk up into a bodega and like have a bodega conversation. You know what I'm saying? Where like you can do that in the Yakuza games, right? Like when you go into the konbini, the convenience store, like it is like as such, so it's like until you can like walk into the bodega, like, and like there's like a black dude outside with Tim's on and like a Yankees hat, and he's like, if you ain't from New York, fuck you, or whatever. And then like you go in there and you can like buy some Skittles. I don't know what New York people buy. Like when you can do that, then it'll be dope and it'll have that soul. But you can't do that yet, right? It's just like New York streets.
Right, yeah, they're just like, to them it's like, it's Fifth Avenue, it looks just like it, or it's Times Square, or whatever, whereas like, Shenmue was more focused on like having capsule toy machines in the tomato market, and like
exactly, like
being able to walk in there and buy stuff.
Exactly, like capsule toy machines, right? It's like this real thing that's really there, and it's so like you have these small, extremely detailed recreations of these cities, not like just this big vast, this big vast, which we usually get with Western games. All the GTAs do it. Spider-Man did it. So yeah, sometimes I feel like maybe we're in the cult. Maybe we're just in the Japanese game cult. And that's just what possible. We like. Who knows?
Well, it's interesting how we can, agree in principle and yet disagree on some of the finer points of these things. But right. I think ultimately, we're both in the Japanese camp on that. But probably revisit some of these. We got some loose ends probably to tie up at some point. But I think that'll probably about do it for Status Quo, episode number 28. And we talked about Final Fantasy. We talked about things younger gamers don't know. We talked about Western and Japanese games, and we'll see you next Monday for episode 29. This is Queasy Crayfish.
I'm Mars Vindicator.
And we are out of here.
Peace.